When I was around 6, I lived in a huge house that was quite intimidating and not very homey. I used to hear a man's voice shouting in my ears, but I think I knew it was in my head too. I would go down to the large garden and shout back and say things like, "Shut up," etc. Anyways, I came to find that a builder fell off the roof and passed away during construction. My mom also said that she felt a force behind her while she was walking down the stairs sometimes. I've had a few other paranormal or psychotic episodes in my life. I went to an old boarding school established 1895 and have vague memories of seeing what I only imagined to be ghosts or spirits walking in the courtyard and passengers when I would wake up randomly at night. These experiences don't seem very clear, but they also don't seem like a dream. I also remember waking up one night and seeing my friend reaching for the cabinet above his bed. I asked what he was doing because it was very late and dark. I turn on the light and he's fast asleep under his duvet. What I saw was just a dark silhouette. Now, more recently, after going out, I came home to my flat alone and kept hearing my friend's voice calling me. It felt so real, and I would follow the voice to see my friend or respond. I just couldn't convince myself that I was alone for some reason. About 3 weeks ago now, after another night like that, I experienced full-blown psychosis, I think. I was dancing and the venue had these trees near the DJ. They were brushing my arm and torso, and I was totally convinced that someone was rubbing their hands on me and kind of groping me. It made me flinch a couple of times, and I was able to tell myself it was in my head. I then asked my friend to swap places with me, and it was fine after that. Just to clear this up now, there's a likelihood of this being something my own mind has conjured up, and circumstances around it possibly just falling into place out of sheer coincidence. I'm sure this is common, however. There are certain aspects that just get me and make me think it's possibly something on top of that. And just to clear up now, never had a history of psychosis or anything of the sort, no mental health problems in the past, maybe fleeting anxiety, although lucid dreaming is something I've tried to practice a lot. So there's a distinct possibility I've created this from somewhere in my mind. But this felt different to me, very different, hence why I'm posting it. This event happened about 3 months ago. I went to sleep as normal, and when I say normal, I meant by browsing Reddit for hours before I actually sleep until about 3 AM, which is normal for me. Oh, and just in case this becomes relevant, I'm a 25-year-old female. I remember drifting into sleep while still on my phone, and that's how I knew I'm like, okay, time to put my phone on charge and probably fall asleep. I'm not sure how long into my sleep this happened, but it started by my name being called, repeatedly. I'm not sure how long for, but at one point it got my attention, and I was distinctly aware that I'm not awake, but conscious, and speaking to someone that isn't me. For the purposes of this post, I'm going to refer to this future self as they/them. They asked me if I'm aware. I tried to say yes. No sound came out. On either side. There were no words. It's just like thinking. And the awareness is there. Instantly understanding images, but no words. They told me that I'm speaking to myself, and that the year for them is 2077, and that they've been in an accident, caused serious brain damage and organ damage, and have been put into a coma. They told me I'm basically not alive, but machines are keeping the brain active, and that they signed up to a scheme a few years prior, an experiment that people are encouraged to undertake and sign up to, should they ever be in a state where death is imminent, to carry out an experiment. You get paid for it, special insurance for the best healthcare, and all you do is agree to it should you ever be on the brink of death, but the brain is intact. And you give them DNA samples monthly. They did explain that they don't know why they were setting it up, because they said they had serious brain damage. Regardless, They seemed aware of everything that was happening outside of the coma. I remember sensations of panic and them trying to calm me down. I remember trying to ask so many questions about if this is real and what happens, and for them to prove it to me. No words still, just feelings and images. It felt like they were inside my brain or I was inside theirs. It felt both foreign and familiar. Regardless, they told me a couple of things that were going on in my family at the time. I said I wanted proof of something that was incoming, something that when it happens I can be sure this is real. I asked for lottery numbers. I felt amusement at this, probably theirs, like they tried to laugh. They told me they knew I was going to say that, because they would. But they said that although they wouldn't remember them anyway, they would give me football scores and election results, but that they can't do that because I'm a gambler. I would bet on it, and I might win a lot. This is where my emotions just went mental. I felt myself trying to cry. I felt dread, passion. They told me that they wouldn't do anything that could change the way my life goes. That might change the people we meet. They said that if this worked, they promised themselves they would never, ever jeopardize our children being born. In that moment, I got it. There was a moment of understanding, and I felt like I was actually speaking to myself. They got serious after this, and said they had to pass on information. You're going to remember as much as you can, and you're going to wake up, so you remember and write it down. I agreed to this. They told me that in the coming years, there's going to be research funded for the study of the possibility of transmitting information through brain cells, not just through space, but time as well. DNA-based quantum entranglement. They added something else in there. I've tried so hard, it hasn't come to me, I'm so sorry. And they told me that when this is made public, be aware of it. Keep looking for the first story that pops up on it, and that I need to reach out to the lead researcher and give them some specific bits of information. I wrote as much of this down as I could remember upon waking up. I know for a fact I missed some, but got enough, I think. I won't post this because it contains personal details of an individual whom I do not know, and I was told to wait until this is made public. I remember scrambling inside my head to recount everything they told me, basically personal details of a person that had clearly been shared with myself, but someone's son. I'm assuming he's going to be the lead researcher when it comes, but it does contain specific instructions. They told me it's fragile, so don't even tell my brother. They know that's the one person I would go to about the instructions because they have to be handled in order. They told me to just keep going how I am. Everything works out. And then I got that feeling you get when you're trying to fall asleep and you feel like you're falling and then wake up just as you're about to hit the ground. And I was awake. I wrote down as much as I could, and I didn't sleep any more that night. When I did finally sleep though, I woke up feeling pretty invigorated that my life's going to end up as something I'm happy with and not want to change. Even the opportunity of winning a shed load of money isn't tempting anymore. I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts, and if anyone knows anything about the research possibly, if this even exists yet, please let me know. Like I said, there's a good chance this was momentary psychosis or the most intricate dream I've ever had, but there's a part of me that just knows. Me, my 2 dogs, and now my fiancé, drove a long way to get to our campsite in the Ozarks, Berkshire Recreational Area to be exact, and it was west of Mountain View, Arkansas. We drove all day Wednesday, May 19th, to get to our campsite and set up by dark. We are completely alone at the campground, as it's the middle of the week and the week before Memorial Day. And the camp we chose is a recreational area, which means no electric hookups, water, or bathrooms, and definitely no camp itself. As we're setting up, I hear this bass-like rhythmic noise that I'm only noticing in my subconscious. I don't know why, but I'm feeling like something is wrong. He and I kept setting up our otherwise perfect campsite until I noticed both of our dogs staring across the small mountain river and into the forest beyond it. Then I asked myself, haven't I been hearing the strange noise coming from that direction? And now they hear it too? I asked my boyfriend to stop rattling tent stakes and lend his ear to this noise. He hears it, and the dogs are even more alerted to it since all the other noises, including literally all of the bugs, frogs and birds, not to mention our own unpacking noises and us chatting, have ceased. At first we wrote it off. It must be some new mountain noise that we just aren't accustomed to. We live in a relatively flat region of the country, and my boyfriend says it could be the rocks settling. I didn't think that was quite right, but I'm not about to go investigate at dusk in bear country before camp is set up. As we're putting the final touches up, like rugs and some solar string lights for the nights to come, the noise gets louder. I would say they were almost more comprehensible. They weren't just a bassy noise anymore. The noise had bass, but it wasn't just bass. It almost articulated, like it was making nonsensical syllables, then pausing, then making more. It got closer and closer, like it was coming towards the edge of the small river opposite us. And I swear on everything I love that it was talking some strange static. Like you were stopped by a car with busted speakers at a stoplight, and they were blaring gothic trap music. But just the talking part, and with your windows up. No music, just loud, muffled mumbling and static. I had a hard time not telling my boyfriend that we should just go. We had both heard it as well as the dogs. But it quickly got farther and then went away, almost completely. So we decided to zip ourselves up in the tent and try to sleep. I woke up many times during that first night to my female dog trembling and growling. And when I strained and listened, I could hear that same muffled bass noise in the distance once again. I did manage to sleep a few hours that first night, and morning thankfully came before the noise could get closer again. The following 3 nights were completely normal. They were filled with sounds of tree frogs, bullfrogs, whippoorwills, cicadas and owls, just like you would imagine from the mountains at night. On Friday night, we got a couple neighbours camping with us and even more on Saturday. My boyfriend also proposed in the middle of a shallow river on our big 18-mile hike, and of course I said yes. Other than that strange, ominous noise that accompanied us on our first night, it was the best trip I could have asked for. I'm just wondering if anyone here might have a rational answer. Okay, so this happened in February 2021. I was 19 at the time and was in my last year of school and was shooting a music video for a final exam submission with my teammates. There were 5 of us in total. We were shooting in a suburban area where one of my friends lived. 2 of the friends had gone back to my friend's house to get the camera as she had left it there to let it charge while she took us to the park. So I was sitting on a bench with one friend while the other was walking right in front of us, all of us just waiting for them to come back. It was around the time it got dark, but fairly bright. So I'm just sitting there in silence with my friend when I hear someone distantly shouting my name. I didn't live in the area, so I didn't think anything of it, figuring it was someone else with my name in the park being called out. This went on and got louder that I honestly got confused. Like, what if it is me being called? So were my friends. I got up to see who it was, and it was a middle-aged man wearing a white shirt calling out to me. When I looked at him, he knew who I was and motioned his hand towards me, like beckoning me. I was extremely confused, and there was obviously no way I was going too near the man, but I did start walking towards him with my friend. He just shouted, "Pick up your phone. Your mum is calling you." And I was like, what? Because my phone was in my pocket and I knew she wasn't calling me. Even then I checked. After saying that he got into his car and left, I hadn't even made it halfway through the distance between us. My friends thought it was someone I knew, and when I told them I had no idea who the fuck that guy was, they were as freaked as I was. The things I don't understand are, how did he know my name? I don't live in that area and nobody else had called me by my name since we were pretty much just focused on our task. The next thing is, why did he say what he said and spoke it in English? Where I'm from, English is not at all the conversational spoken language, especially weird from a middle-aged man. For me, what makes it even weirder is that I do speak English mainly because of my dad. But that's a whole other story that's not important. And the only thing that matters is that he spoke the language I mostly speak, in which nobody, never a stranger, would speak in this place at first conversations at all. And he referred to my mother as Mom, which I guess is common, but again, that's what I specifically call her. It's not the usual term used here. I just don't get that if he was a weirdo, then why did he leave? Why did he beckon me towards him and then leave after telling me Mom called? It was so weird. I'd never seen the man before. My friends initially thought it was a relative of mine and were just as freaked as I was. Anyway, we had to shoot, so I didn't think much of it, so I just let it go to the back of my mind. I'm not scared by it, but I am perplexed by it. I can't seem to conclude whether it was paranormal or some super creep. I guess the only thing I can add, if it's worth mentioning, is that during that time I had become fairly agnostic and struggled with my faith in God a lot. Because I was studying advanced biology in school and, I don't know, it just seemed to me that existence was just an evolutionary product. So in those one-on-one conversations, you sometimes have with God, I asked God to send me a supernatural sign in front of a bunch of people because I didn't want to be spooked, lol. Because I find supernatural things pretty convincing evidence of a higher power. At the same time, I feel like I'm just making things up because I want it to be like that. I just can't explain it. And I wanted to share this if anybody has some explanations or anything at all to say. To start off, I worked at an elderly home for more than a year. I'm turning 20 this year. This happened when I was 18. Keep in mind that English isn't my first speaking language. I've heard many things about the 2 elderly homes in the city I lived in. I learned the stories when I worked there from some of the workers and told me some scary stories they experienced and what visitors had told them. It wasn't exactly nerve-wracking, but there was a few creepy stories. An example that I've also witnessed was after an elderly person passed, their alarm would still be ringing, even though no one lived in that room anymore. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, the elderly people get an alarm for them to push on if they need help with something. We would see it on a clock/board and go and help them. There shouldn't have been a reason for them to be ringing. Really creepy. But some people have different reactions to it. When I started to work there, my co-workers always let me do the more challenging work, since I was new. That happens at every work when you're new and don't know anything. They all seemed scared or, anxious about the basement. The part of the elderly that I was assigned to had their washroom down in the basement. Every part of the elderly home could have their clothes washed down there, but since I worked at the part where the elderly home is at its oldest, I forgot to mention that. The building is 2 different houses, put together if that makes sense. One has been there since like the mid-1900s, and the other part was built sometime in the 2000s. I worked in the oldest part, where the washroom was in the basement. No one would willingly go down there. But since I had no clue, they let me go. I'm sure they were like, if she doesn't know, it won't hurt her. If I didn't know then, I know now. There was always a creepy feeling in the basement, like someone was watching you.
I knew in an instant why my co-workers were willing to send me down there. I always had music on, like old music, for apparent reason. It made me feel better about it. The cleaning staff had their carts with cleaning stuff in the basement as well. While I listened to the music, I heard something fall over. I looked for the source and saw that a bottle on the cart had fallen over. I got out of there quickly. Another time, I was hanging white sheets to dry in that one room that heats up and is blowing. Don't know the name. When I was done, I turned around to turn the lights off. I swear I could see a faint shadow by the sheets, like behind it, like a contour. I got that scene from The Conjuring when Lorraine is taking down the laundry, and I ran my ass back upstairs. I refused to leave anyone's side after that. They knew I was in the basement, so they probably didn't question me further about that. I'm not sure about that one. It was late. I hadn't slept well the whole week. Had watched scary movies and such. I'm a believer of the paranormal, so when someone tells a story about paranormal activity, I believe them. But the sheets were moving around, and since I was already frightened, it could have been whatever. I never told my co-workers about that one, but I did tell them about the feeling of being watched, things falling over and whatnot. This is the time they decided to tell me their stories, and I was like, wow, couldn't have told me before? They thought I didn't see or hear anything, since I never said anything before. I remember a time from that basement so vividly that even writing this makes my tears well up. I came in on a non-working day to talk with my boss about something. I don't really remember now. I asked my co-workers and they actually said that she was in the basement. Weird flex, but okay. My boss had an encounter with another person with stocking of supplies or something like that, one of the co-workers said. So off I went to the scary basement. So when I got down there, I heard the voices from upstairs, but I also heard other voices. Like, it sounded like my boss. Seriously. I had walked a bit in, so you couldn't hear the others anymore from upstairs. I walked to a door. I heard someone talking behind it, thinking it was my boss and was like, oh, she's in there looking at supplies, right? Opens the door and instantly I'm met with darkness and the voice is gone. I looked inside at first, not realizing it got all quiet. Then I got frightened by the darkness, shut the door hard and trotted away. I didn't realize it right away, however, that it stopped talking. I was just freaked out. Another time I was really freaked out was when I walked into an elderly woman who lived at the elderly home. I was going to give her the medicine she had at that time. So I walked in and she sat in her wheelchair, kind of facing her bed, and therefore could see me walking into her room. I said my hello and what I was doing, but she wasn't focused on me. She was kind of looking behind me. But I wasn't surprised. It's nothing new. I turned to my left to get her medicine, right by the door. When I did give her it, she stopped me and asked if I saw the man standing by the door. I looked at the door and it was cracked open a bit. I didn't fully close it and it was dark outside the door. We shut the light off at night and have like night lights along the corridors. You see a man standing at the door, I asked. Not right now, but when you walked in, he was right behind you, just staring into the room, she answered. That freaked me out. I mean, I'd gotten used to the weird feeling, but I must have noticed something, right? Maybe not. I walked towards the door and looked outside, but there was no one there. I hadn't heard anyone walking outside the door either. Many would probably say it's her mind playing tricks because of her age, but I've never heard her say something like that before. I asked her what the man looked like, and she said that he looked like a fisherman, raincoat and a rain hat. I made sure she took her medication and walked to check with my colleagues if someone had been there, but they said no. The only visitors that had been there were at noon, no one else. I mentioned everything the lady said, and one of them said that the lady had an experience where someone tried to break in. My only thought was, who breaks in somewhere in a raincoat? She was a nerve wreck when I came back and said she wanted to have her doors locked that night. There is a fisherman picture a little away from the room, but I doubt that she imagined him being there. My grandmother lives at that elderly care. She said that she woke up one night and saw a man sitting in the chair in front of her bed and watching over her. He too looked like the man the other lady mentioned. Raincoat and rain hat. Sus, isn't it? We think that he might have been a patient at the elderly care and watches out for everyone. A fisherman wouldn't be out of order, really, since that city I lived in used to handle fishing as a living, if you know what I mean. This story took place a year ago, when we decided to have a vacation in Luxembourg for a few days. We were staying at my uncle's house. He lives in Luxembourg. Me, my mom and dad were given a room on the second floor. The room was close to the stairs. My uncle and aunt's room were right across from ours. Now, when we were putting our luggage in the room, I decided to take the bed farthest away from the door since there was a power socket right beside the bed and I tend to watch videos before going to sleep, so I need easy access to my charger. My mum took the middle bed and my dad the bed closest to the door and bathroom. Well, actually, the real reason I wanted the bed farthest away was because right beside the bathroom door was a long lampshade. It's one of those old lampshades where the top looks like someone put an umbrella on it or something. That lampshade really gave me a bad feeling. At that time, I didn't really understand why I felt that way, just that I didn't want to be close to it at all. Now here's the creepy part that night. It was around 10 PM at night, and I was still watching videos on YouTube. My mum and dad were sleeping already, since we had a rough day of sightseeing and it was raining, so we were all tired. I kept looking in that direction of where the lampshade stood. I felt stupid being paranoid, to be honest. I just felt like something was there. When I look at that particular spot, it feels like it's darker in that area compared to the rest of the room. I tried my hardest to just focus on the video I was watching. It didn't work, by the way. Around 20 minutes close to 11, I heard my mom whispering or whimpering. I don't know. I thought she was sleep talking. I thought she was having a weird dream. It happens to all of us sometimes. 5 to 10 minutes later, she started whimpering louder. Now that got me worried, so I started shaking her, trying to wake her up. She wouldn't. So I called for my dad, who was right beside my mom's bed. Both of us started shaking her and calling her name. After a few seconds, that got her to wake up. My God, was she a mess. She was crying and kept looking at the spot where the lampshade stood. She kept telling my dad that she wanted us to get out of the room. So my dad woke my uncle and told him we were sleeping downstairs in the living room, since something happened with my mom and she doesn't want to sleep in the room anymore. We got her downstairs. I quickly went back to the room to get my phone from my bed. And I kid you not, when I turned around to leave, I saw on the spot where the lampshade stood, something or someone stood behind that stupid lampshade, peeking out at me. A literal black figure as big as the lampshade. Let's just say I ran out of that room as fast as I could. My mum explained to us downstairs what the hell she dreamt about. She told me she could see the room in a dream. She saw me using my phone and my dad asleep. But what caught her eye was something or someone that was standing behind the lampshade, staring at her apparently. She couldn't move, so she tried to apparently scream for us, and we couldn't hear her. That screaming is apparently me hearing her whimpering. She started panicking because she couldn't move, and that figure was giving off huge amounts of bad jujus. So she started screaming louder in a dream, where she saw me moving to her, shaking her, till my dad also joined in. And it's like she got slapped and she was awake. That creeped me out. Why? Because I saw the same thing. I told them about me seeing the same thing when I went back to get my phone. My dad asked my uncle what the heck is up with that lampshade. He told us he doesn't know where the lampshade came from because they bought the house it was in the attic with the other furniture. My aunt thought it looked elegant, so they put it in the guest bedroom, which is where we slept. That night really solidified my belief of the paranormal, and there are things out there that are good and that are bad. That thing, whatever it was by no means good. My uncle threw that lampshade away. That's what he told us months later when my mom asked him about it. I am never sleeping at my uncle's house again. For the rest of our stay, we slept in the living room and we never went inside that room during our stay. But every time I go to my uncle's room to play some PS4, I always get a bad feeling where the guest bedroom is. I don't know what that thing is, but I don't really want to know.
I've never been super involved in the supernatural world. I've always believed in ghosts, and I've seen a few over my lifetime. I usually try to analyse things from a scientific standpoint and debunk them for my own sanity. However, I had an encounter recently that left me feeling confused and unsure. I've never played with the idea of humans not being human before, but I think I might have encountered one. I decided I wanted to go for a walk in a very isolated forest the other day. It's about a 30-minute drive from my small town, so I almost never see anybody else there. When I arrived in the dirt parking lot, there were no other vehicles, as expected. The forest is filled with giant cedars, and the foggy, chilly day made it incredibly beautiful, but eerie at the same time. About 20 minutes into the forest, I see a person. It was a lady wearing a large sun hat, a dress, and carrying a wooden basket. I was curious what she had in her basket and where she may have come from, as the only parking area had no other vehicles. I was planning on saying hello and asking what she was gathering as we passed. She was walking towards me, but never lifted her head to look at me. Her face was completely concealed by the large sun hat. I found this strange, as usually people will look when someone is walking towards them, especially a lady walking alone in the woods. As we got closer, still without raising her head so I could see her face, she took a 90-degree corner and walked off into the forest off the path. I thought this was strange, but continued my walk. As I was returning about 10 minutes later, she was still in the same general area as before. She was facing away from me and kneeled down. She looked like she was picking mushrooms and placing them in her basket. As soon as I got about as close as I did the first time, without looking back, she stood up and walked directly into the woods again off the trail. I looked at the area where she was kneeled, and there was nothing there. No signs of mushrooms or anything. Almost concerned at this point, I said hello as I was walking past. She turned around with her head down so I couldn't see her face, and stood there looking at the ground but in my direction. Her basket was empty, and she never looked up, always hiding her face with the large hat. She didn't say anything back. As I walked off, she kneeled down again to start collecting something. The more I think about this encounter, the more I'm convinced it was not a strange human, but some sort of spirit who didn't like me being there.